Hello, this is David Tillier here with Laura Parr, and you're listening to Property Investing Live. Today I'm going to be speaking with Laura about her journey and a little bit about how she got into property, the journey that she's been through, and I'm sure you listeners will get a lot of great value from listening to her. Laura, welcome.
Thank you. Hi, nice to be here.
Yeah, it's good to have you, actually. Just before you guys come on, it was actually saying that Laura and I have known each other for a long time, but obviously haven't spoken for a while. And you've had quite a journey in that period of time. A lot of things have been happening to you. You've made a lot of success through trial and error. But one thing that you've always been true to is your mindset and have a really focused, positive mind. Yeah. And I think that's obviously, that shines through. So tell us a little bit about your background, Laura, and how you got into property initially.
Yeah, well, I started off, I've always been interested in property ever since I can remember, but it's sort of, been a bit of a dream. You see people doing properties up and you get excited by it and you just think, oh, one day. But then when I left university, I went into a corporate job in central London and I found out pretty quickly that I did not enjoy that in any way, shape or form. Okay. So it allowed me, or it pushed me, I suppose, to start really focusing on property and what I could do. I still had the mindset at that point that, you need money to be in property, which I obviously learned is not necessarily true. But I at least started with my kind of research and I thought, well, if I'm not enjoying my job, at least I can work out how I'm going to do it when I leave. And obviously quickly learned that I could do it. I started sourcing whilst I was still working for my corporate company, sourced and sold a couple of deals, and then moved on to a joint venture with now a good friend of mine, but somebody I met at a networking event. And we split house into 4 flats and it sort of just escalated from there. And obviously from that, I enjoyed the development, but realised that I could do with a little bit of regular cash flow. And that's what led me to Rent2Rent, which has been my, I guess, main strategy for the last sort of few years. I still do sourcing and selling and a sort of developments here and there, but generally speaking, it's been Rent2Rent until most recently.
Okay. Good. Okay. So you mentioned there that obviously while you were still in your corporate in the earlier days of your property career, you started doing some sourcing. Can you explain to the people that don't know what sourcing is, what is sourcing and how you go about doing that?
Yeah, of course. Sourcing is essentially finding property deals that you think will work for investors, even if you don't have money yourself. You can source a deal, you can run the figures, you can understand what could be done with that property, and then through networking events or whoever it is that you can pass those deals on to other people who do have the money and they do have the ability, and they essentially pay you a fee for that. So you're saving them huge amounts of time by doing the figures. They do obviously have to check them all themselves, and you need to make that very clear. But at the same time, if you've done the research, you've managed to create the relationship, you've either got an offer accepted or you've at least sort of gone and got them quotes, talked to councils, etc. That saves them huge amounts of time, and passing it over to somebody who has the money and the ability to do that project, means that you get a nice fee for that, which is quite handy.
Okay. So initially then, this is how you started off your property career, by actually doing a lot of networking, speaking to a lot of people, going out, finding the properties, then crunching the numbers, then actually packaging those deals and offering those off to other people that could actually go ahead and just make the project happen.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay. So then obviously you started finding, you mentioned Rent2Rent as well. Explain to us what Rent2Rent is.
So Rent2Rent basically is where I will rent a property from a landlord, and I might rent a 3-bed 2-reception room house, and I'll pay them the rate for that. So that might be sort of, I don't know, let's for ease of numbers, let's say £2,000 per month. So I pay them that just to rent that house. I then will turn it into a room by room HMO, and I will rent out the rooms individually, and I should be able to make more than that. So I will take the risk and I will cover all the voids because it's a guaranteed rent to the landlord that I'm renting from. But then hopefully the amount that I make will be larger than if I were to just do management on top.
Okay. All right. So talking about £2,000 rents, obviously you're talking about London prices, right?
Yes, I am talking about London prices.
Right. Okay. So basically, it's a case of actually, could people maybe call that a subletting, or is it? I mean, it is. Okay, so you're actually you're renting it from a landlord. You're putting your own time and money and effort in to actually do the property up, on a room by room basis, and then you're actually renting it out on a room by room basis. That should obviously cover the cost and plus give you some profit on top of that.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's definitely classed as subletting. I think that word has been given some, horrendous connotations, and people hear it in the news and they think subletting is illegal. There are ways that it can be illegal, but in itself, it's not. So that's definitely an objection that I've come across a lot, and I have to explain it quite a few times to landlords or to agents even sometimes. It really just depends on making sure that you've got the correct contracts. But yes, it is a form of subletting, but it is the right way to do subletting.
Okay, all right. So this is actually called Rent2Rent, and it's a strategy that you've been very successful with, and can we say that's how you build up your portfolio, and you've got a lot of properties now within your London area that you actually do rent to rent out. Okay, all right, good. So let's just go back a little bit, because obviously I'm very interested in to know how you got your first property. I know you were sourcing, but tell us about your first property and how that went.
So my first sourcing property?
No, your first rent-to-rent property that you actually got for yourself, yeah. Okay.
So I'd actually started doing rent-to-rents for other people first. So again, very similar to sourcing. You can source developments, but you can also source rent-to-rents. So I'd already done it for a couple of people already, and kind of knew what I was looking for. And I actually teamed up with some business partners to start my rent-to-rent portfolio, because one of the challenges when you start rent-to-rent is obviously if you're going through agents, you're going to get referenced. And referencing, they're going to say, well, how long's your company been going, and how much money have you made, and so on. And obviously the answer is, well, nothing, and for about 2 weeks. So you're not really going to get very far. So there are ways that you can combat that, and I know in my talk on Tuesday that I'm going to be going through a lot of that, and I am going to be specifically talking about how to start. My decision was to start with a joint venture partner who was a little bigger as a company and had been doing it a little longer, and therefore could pass referencing themselves. So that's how I ended up getting my first one, and we got that one through an agent.
Okay, all right.
From there.
So you was also, while you was doing that, you were learning a lot about the process and the systems that go along the way. I think it's also fair to say that, you're always going to persist with insufficient knowledge. So, as you go through any journey, you're always learning on the job as well. But, okay, so you got it through an agent, and you did a JV, you said, with someone to actually make this happen?
Yes, I was working with business partners. We worked together for quite a while, maybe about 18 months or so. And I mean, that in itself, again, I'm going to be going through it on Tuesday, but that was a learning experience in itself. Aside from the rent-to-rent, just being involved with other people, it's a tricky business, and especially if you don't know if you've got it right, or you rush into things and so on. So they helped to pass referencing and allow for the properties to go through, whereas I wouldn't have necessarily been able to have done it myself on my own. There are other ways. You can go direct to vendor and so forth, but we built up some great relationships already with agents, and I didn't really want to waste those relationships. And at the time, properties sort of were flowing fairly quickly. So that's how we kind of went through with the first one.
Okay, good. So once you've actually gone through that first one, so you've learned something along that process as well. So then I take it that you then started to maybe move forward to get others, and you maybe started to put systems in place. So tell me what systems you have in place now that actually help you, and that's allowed you to actually grow your portfolio to what it is today.
Yeah. Well, actually, I'm in a very fortunate position now where I don't manage my portfolio at all. So I've passed it over to somebody to manage on my behalf, which is brilliant. But for a long time, I was managing myself. But we put plenty of systems in place. So even just little things, and this is when I've coached people on Rent2Rent previously, sometimes it is the small things. It's not necessarily some big fandangled techno piece of equipment that needs to be put in place, but just things like having lock boxes on the side of the house. It allows you to be able to do maintenance without having to be there to let people in. Or if tenants call you at 11 o'clock at night and they're locked out, you don't have to get out of bed to go and let them back in again.
That's happened a few times.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just things like that, especially if you do take on a property that's a little further away than maybe you'd have initially wanted. I don't want to be travelling an hour across London to let a maintenance guy in for him to be in there 10 minutes. It doesn't make any sense, and you've got to value your time. So things like that. It sounds really simple, but people just don't necessarily do it. And since we've done it, it's made it a lot easier. But then other sort of things as well. I speak to quite a few people that do Rent2Rent, and just things like having the rent coming in on the same day. You know, I was speaking to someone the other day, and they've got a number of Rent2Rents themselves, and they just start the rents whenever the contracts start. But that just means that pretty much every day they're constantly having to go, right, who's owing rent today, and having to check and go in and go out and go in and go out. Whereas we put that little bit of extra work in at the beginning, and we pro-rata people's rent so that everybody knows rent day's the first, and every single month it's simple, it's quick, it's easy, and we just don't need to worry about it. And then of course we do have, you know, programs and systems in place as well. I used Trello for quite a while to manage the portfolio as it was growing, which I really like. I think that's a really good system. But yeah, eventually I've got to the stage, like I say, where I'm just not managing it myself anymore, which is ideal.
Sure. It is. You're absolutely right. I think, and when you put systems in place like that, it does help you in the flow and the ease of the system. You know, I think, you know, the saying is that, you know, your best teacher was your last mistake. So it's actually learning from those things. And by putting those systems in place, it allows you, like you say, having all the rents paid on the first. I do that with all my properties. And, you know, I just go there on the first and see who has paid, who hasn't paid. And who hasn't paid, you know, gets a text or a letter or something. Exactly. And then, you know, rather than checking it throughout the month. So, yeah, I mean, things like that. And I'm sure you're going to share a lot of tips and secrets, really, that you've actually put in place in your property portfolio on your talk on Tuesday. So that's great. So tell me a little bit about where are you now within your property journey? I mean, I know you said that you don't manage your property portfolio now, and obviously you built it up to a stage by where somebody else manages that for you. So whereabouts are you in your property journey now?
So I'm happy with my Rent2Rent portfolio. I'm keeping it as is. I am back to sourcing. I quite enjoy it. So I'm sourcing for other developers at the moment, both Rent2Rent and actual development opportunities. But actually, I've also, one of the things that I found when I was doing property and when I was, speaking to all of the investors and all these network events, it wasn't necessarily that property was the issue, or the numbers or the figures, or understanding systems and things like this. Actually, a lot of people were struggling more with the mindset of how to actually run a successful business, and how to what you actually needed to do in order to be successful. And some people were making mistakes, and it was killing them, and they were either leaving the industry entirely, or they were just not learning from them, or they were getting scared, and they were then sort of dipping their toe back in the water and really sort of worrying about what it was that they were doing. And that, to me, is what I've found is the issue a lot of the time. It's not necessarily not understanding the spreadsheets or not understanding the management systems. It is more about being able to understand what it is that people need to do in order to push themselves to be the best that they can possibly be, and to run the most successful company. So I'm actually coaching now more on that side, and I deal with a lot of property investors, and obviously my knowledge in property is a really helpful backstory, I suppose. But a lot of what I concentrate on is business success and mindset, and it can be outside of this industry as well. But it's really focusing on, why are you, where do you want to be, and how are we going to get you there, and how are we going to do it the best way that we can possibly do it. So that's what I'm focusing more so on now, which I love. I absolutely love it. So I'm still keeping my toe in the property side of things, but this is kind of my true love, I suppose.
Yeah, sure. Well, I think that you're absolutely right, because a lot of people do actually sometimes take their eye off the ball, or don't really have their mind in the right place. And throughout my coaching program, one of the actual modules that I go through is your mindset, because I think you've got to have your mind in the right place. You've got to be focused. You've got to have the passion, the determination, and the willingness to succeed. And whatever it is you're applying your efforts to, if you've got that right mindset, you're going to succeed no matter what. So I think anything that you can actually share with us now, or even on the day when you do your talk, is obviously going to be of great benefit. So what are some key things you would say that you can actually share with our listeners at the moment that you need to have as a good mindset?
Well, the two big ones that spring to mind are, number one, what I find is a lot of people, when they see people doing really well, because obviously, you know, the kind of names that go around the industry and all the results that we tend to hear of are all the amazing ones. And we hear of people, you know, doing millions within their first year or something crazy. And people aspire to that. And that's not a bad thing. That's a great thing. But we have to also remember that if we don't get those results as well, or if we struggle to sort of work the same way, a lot of people get demoralized. And so they don't use that information proactively. They actually use it. It sort of gets inside and they go, oh, I'm obviously not as good as them. And they make up stories in their head as to, I couldn't possibly do that because. And there's all of these things that are integral to you know, you and your personality. And people do it without even thinking. You know, how many times do people get up and they kind of go, oh, yeah, but I couldn't do that because, or, well, that person better educated than I am, or, you know, this is how, of course he could do that because he had, you know, money or whatever. There's so many excuses that can be made, and it's just how we decide that we want to use them, and whether we want to use them constructively or whether we want to let them kind of get to us, as it were. And the natural way, unfortunately, is that most people let them get to you, and it sort of demoralizes. And we go to networking events and we go on courses, and we come out of it feeling really pumped because we're like, this is amazing, and they've said it's going to be so easy, and then that dies down. And so that runs into my second one, and that's consistency. So it's great being motivated after an event, and it's great having an amazing meeting and walking out feeling like, you know, you're king of the world, but actually the successful people are the kind of people that can push themselves to do what they need to do, even when no one's listening, and even when they haven't had a successful meeting in weeks, and even when there are no networking events to go to and they're feeling pretty crap, but they just have to keep doing what they're doing and going on and on and on and on. And again, that's what a lot of people fall short on, is that it's easy to do it when you're feeling good and somebody's motivating you, but when somebody's not, you need to be your own motivator, and that's hard. So that's a really big thing.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I think it's fair to say, you know, that if you commit enough, you'll find a way. If not, you'll find an excuse.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah.
And a lot of people do actually have an excuses, and you know, and another thing as well that I've found, you know, in all the time that I've been coaching, is that people, you know, should themselves all the time. You know, I should have done it. I should have done it, and I'm too old now. Or I'm too this. I'm too that now. They're always going to find an excuse why not to, but it's actually finding that reason why they should, and then actually committing to that and going ahead and going forward. So I think, you know, applying that mindset that you've clearly got, and obviously sharing that with people is going to inspire people and motivate people no matter what they're doing in their life. So that's really, really great. So before we end now, I mean, I'd like you to tell us a little bit about, you know, the sort of maybe courses or trainings or mentorships that you actually have at the moment, or do you actually work with people on a one-to-one? How can you help people if they wanted to work with you?
So mainly at the moment I have one-to-one clients, and I think that a lot of, especially if we are working on mindset, it's obviously a very individual thing to be working with. So I like to work one-to-one with people because it means that it's obviously a very, very personal service. It means that it's very specific to them. So that's generally what I do. I am looking at holding an event. A couple of people have been asking me about sort of trainings or group trainings and so forth. So potentially there will be something later this year. But if anyone's interested, then, you know, obviously I'll be there on Tuesday. I'm more than happy. I'll stay all evening. So, you know, happy to answer any questions. But they can get hold of me on my company Facebook page, where I sort of post fairly regularly. And any updates about anything I do, I can put on there. And obviously, if they are interested in speaking to me about coaching, then I'm more than happy to go through it with them and work out what would be best for them.
Great, excellent. Okay, and we're also going to put some information in the show notes below as well. So if anybody wants to contact Laura, that they can do so via our website, or I think you've got a Twitter page as well that people can contact you on.
Facebook, like the main ones, mainly Facebook. Facebook. The company's the Success Date. So yeah, if you Facebook the Success Date, then that's where you should find me.
Wonderful. Great. Good stuff. Okay. Well, Laura, thank you very much. I mean, it's been inspiring to just speaking to you. Obviously, I can see that you're really pumped. And I think anybody that's going to see you speak live at the EPN event on that, the 13th of March, Camden Town Hall at 7 p.m. So if anybody hasn't booked their ticket to come and see you, they should do it right now. Because, I know we're all looking for two things in life, and that's our purpose for being here and love. And I think, you have an abundance of that. You can see that, you're passionate about what you do and you want to share that with others. So I think, people should actually now come and see you. And as you said, you're going to be there until the end. So if they've got any questions that they want to ask you, that they can do so. So from me and behalf of everyone, thank you very much for your time. It's been wonderful catching up with you again and speaking with you. And we look forward to seeing you there on Tuesday.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm looking forward to it.
Okay, take care now, Laura. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.